This is Infants on Thrones, the philosophies of men mingled with humor. We are the Quorum.
Welcome back to another episode of Infants on Thrones. My name's Tom Perry. So Matt and I got talking behind the scenes about how the Sam Young interview went. Matt has a completely different take and thoughts about how the interview went than I did. And I kind of challenged him on a few things, told him that I was conflicted about it, and a few other things. And so we had a conversation behind the scenes. We had a phone call and some text messages, and it kind of led to a point where we decided together that it might be good to sort of dissect this openly and record it in the hopes that maybe even we can address some of the listener concerns, because there's been a decent amount of feedback, both pro and negative. It's definitely been a polarizing episode. We decided we were going to talk about it, and we brought Glenn on, and then at the last minute, Jake jumped on, even though he didn't even listen to the damn thing. But it's, who's going to turn down an opportunity to have Jake sit in? So that's kind of the background and the disclaimer of this episode. So it is going to be pretty meta, and if you're not really interested in listening to this sort of thing, then go ahead and skip it. If you listen to the Sam Young interview and you don't have thoughts one way or another, and you're not really interested in hearing us kind of reflect back and talk about potentially Matt's approach, whether he was too forceful or whether his tone was under question or whatever, then this episode isn't for you. So it's okay if you skip it. It truly is. And I would completely understand that. But for the rest of you that are interested, I hope you enjoy it. It was really eye-opening to be able to have that opportunity to talk as directly and openly to Matt and kind of voice some of my concerns. I will say this about Matt, and I know this is probably going to be a little too vulnerable, but that's just the way I am now. I love Matt. I consider him a dear friend, and even if his tone or his approach seems off-putting or makes me feel uncomfortable, the bottom line is he's earned my trust, and what he said during the interview was important, and I don't want that to get lost in my challenges to him and his approach. So I hope that's crystal clear, that I still give a lot of deference to Matt and his expertise in this, that he knows what he's talking about, and what he's talking about is important. It's important to victims everywhere, in any way, shape, or form, no matter where you fall. And that's the underlying message. And all I really wanted in this challenge is to help him and help us find a way to maximize our reach, maximize our effectiveness, being able to not turn off people, not turn off ears that might be listening, that it could definitely benefit. That's my whole intention. So I hope that's clear. I hope that message is definitely being received out there. So yeah, with that said, let's just jump into the discussion, shall we?
Really, we're doing a Sam Young post-mortem because there was comments, and I don't know about controversy. I mean, there were comments, and particularly about kind of tone and my approach, and it, I don't know, it struck a chord with us, certainly Tom and I, and there were some concerns that Tom was uncomfortable with the way I was, and I was uncomfortable with the way I was, sort of, but maybe not.
What does that? I was uncomfortable with the way I was. I'm not even comfortable with my own skin.
That's it, man. I know what was in my mind, and it was in good faith, and so I wanted to get on and talk about tone and the way we're perceived, and what we've learned from podcasting and trying to communicate certain things and how we're received and how to have conversations with people in good faith, which I thought we had. And I was troubled a little bit by being constantly hearing, what he said was really good and the content was good, but I just didn't like his tone. And, we got that 1-star review about that I assume was about me of they treat their guests.
Oh, no, it's all men.
Yes, all of you.
All of us.
Treat all of our guests.
Not all infants, hashtag not all infants.
And we, I got the same thing with the Bill Reel thing. And there's been there's other things that I've been doing interviews with, with national media, with Fox News and working with CNN and MSNBC. And that's not to be like, oh, I'm a big deal. I'm just saying that's been the reality. And I've talked to Nightline and producers and reporters for the last year on sexual abuse. And I've been criticized for my tone a lot when I talk about it. In fact, I had an interview, or I had I talked to a producer.
Wait, are you saying that those people criticize you also
No.
about your tone?
No. I'm saying that I started recording. I record everything. I basically record every conversation I have anymore. With especially on the phone with reporters. I just don't trust reporters. I don't trust.
Is that like a Howard Hughes thing?
Yeah, I also keep my pee
in a jar.
Yeah. No, I just don't trust reporters, and I've been talking to a lot of them, and so I record when I talk to reporters. That's just, if I'm going to be quoted, I want to make sure that if I'm Matt Long says this, no, if I didn't, I can prove why. But I recorded one recently, and I was criticized for my tone. I sent it to a couple people because it frustrated me.
Oh, is that the one that you sent to me?
Yeah, I sent one to Glenn, and I sent it to some other people that I work with, and there was just this big conversation about tone and how to communicate these things, and the things that about sexual abuse are really, really important. But you've got a particular tone, and I know I do. I just have I have a certain way, and I have been reflecting on that, and the Sam Young interview kind of brought all of that to head, because primarily there's not a lot of people I give a shit about what they think about my tone, but one of them happens to be Tom. And when he said he was conflicted about it, and obviously, had his own concerns about my tone, that caused me to pause and say, that's someone I want to hear it from, because if I can adjust my tone to make my message more effective, I want to do that. And so that's kind of the conversation I want to have, not just about me, but about just generally the idea of tone and how we're trying to communicate and how we're perceived. And I think we've all kind of experienced, at least have experience, and I, experienced dealing with that anyway. So that's kind of the framing, as it were, of the Sam Young post-mortem. More about, not about content as much as just tone and approach, I guess.
So yeah, that's a good way to frame it, I guess. Yeah, my concerns were initially, I guess I can kind of walk through a little bit how I felt in the moment and as it was going. Originally, I had an idea how the interview would go and everything. And Sam, I have a lot of respect and admiration for Sam, as I know Matt does too, even though that kind of gets lost in the quote tone or whatever. But as it was going along, there was, I don't know, probably 2 instances where I felt really uncomfortable, and it was getting really cringy, and it was, me being on the call was, it just felt weird. And I know Sam felt the same way, like I guess in a way he overreacted a little bit. And that's when Matt sort of corrected him and said, I'm an ally. I'm a friend. You got to understand that. And so, yeah, I guess it is sort of addressing Matt's tone or his approach, that it was somewhat off-putting. I guess I called it sharp and hostile.
So can we talk about that word tone and define it?
Have I ever told you how much I love you, Jake?
Is that the $1 million question? Is what is tone?
Let's talk about it.
Glenn,
I know. I was just saying that what Matt said to you was in a dulcet tone, but the timing's all off now because I was muted. Sorry.
Oh,
that's all.
So
that's
tone.
all it was. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, I know I have an aggressive approach. I'm very aggressive, and I'm very passionate. I'm very loud, and I've always had a problem. And it's listen, guys, I've always had a problem of communicating very very emotionally and very strongly, and it gears towards sounding like anger when it's not. And I say, I have a resting angry face, kind of like Randy does, right? And so I've always kind of battled against this, especially as a father and dealing with my children, of sounding more angry than I was. Even when I was angry, it was even worse. And so I've always just pushed on that spectrum. So when I hear tone, I can only talk about me and knowing what that means. And it's like, I get it. I get it. I sound more yelly, or I think Tom said it right, like scolding. I sounded that way towards Sam, and it was more in trying to be very what's the word? And not empathic, emphatic.
Well, going back at that time, especially during the section where we talk about grooming, right? Because that's kind of I think where things got really awkward or weird. You were talking about that you were getting emotional just now. Do you feel like you were? Can you recall getting really emotional or passionate?
Yeah, I definitely recall being passionate, especially in talking to you today. And when listening back, I remember being, the triggered. I remember the same thing when he said it. I had this thing. Oh, damn it!
Well, explain that. What is that? Oh, damn it! Is that?
Yeah. So here's how I can articulate it.
Okay.
Certain concepts have become are so critical to import are critically important to understand if we want to understand what the real world of abuse looks like. And one of those is grooming. And the less we understand it on a real level to be able to apply it into our lives, the less apt we are to protect children. So when I heard Sam do that, and I've seen it a number of times, and it has continually. The more that Sam has communicated this, it has started to permeate advocates in the victim world, particularly in the ex-Mormon community. And it's become misused to a point of no longer being usable, where everything's grooming. And when we don't understand what actual grooming behaviors are, we not just risk, the result is we aren't able to protect our children or other people's children because we don't know how to identify the real grooming behaviors. And so when I hear that, God damn it, it's you guys are actually causing more risk to be out there for your children by using a term rhetorically rather than with precision.
So your anger, and I hate to even say that word because it's probably not appropriate, but that frustration is aimed more at kind of a general populace, right? Not one individual.
Yes.
Okay.
That this is a concept that's critical to understanding in order if you care about children, and if you care about that sounds so well, if you care about children, you do it this way, right? But
to those who don't care about children.
Yeah, to those of you who don't. But that was the reaction. So it's not, Sam, you're an idiot and I'm so smart. It's this really is necessary this can help people protect their own children. And I can't let you continue to misuse that term when there are people out there who need to be. So I'm not talking to Sam. I was talking to all of the listeners. I say, wait a minute. I need you to understand this is that is not what grooming is. And this is what grooming is. To start there. And so that was the frustration is Sam, you have such good intentions. And in your good intentions, you are actually causing harm unnecessarily from ignorance.
Yeah, you were trying to correct something.
Yeah.
And instead you came at it in a very sharp or directed way, right?
Right.
I think that's interesting though. I mean, because you say sharp and direct. Sharp, maybe I could take a little bit of an issue with. Direct, there shouldn't be any problem with going at something really direct. And one of the things that has been interesting, because I've also been watching the comments come in, and it's been so interesting to me to see people on one side that just absolutely loved it. and said, "Oh my gosh, I've been hearing these things that Sam's been doing. It's kind of been making me a little bit nuts too. We all need to check ourselves. We all need to check in with experts and make sure that we're grounded in the things that we're doing." Like those kinds of comments. They're like, "I'm so glad that Matt said what he said." And then on the other side of it, how rude, you didn't even let the guest get in a word edgewise, and there's like all that really didn't like that directness, didn't like that tone, but also it seemed like they didn't like somebody who's kind of a cult hero, or someone who has kind of cult hero status right now in Sam Young because of the things that he's done. Like, don't tarnish him. Don't give that guy anything but admiration and thanks.
Yeah.
That there's like a subset of people who feel that way. And it's just been interesting to see.
Do you not understand that though?
I absolutely understand it.
You don't want to cut him down at the knees, because the momentum of what he's doing is important.
Sure, but like, can you understand the sophistication of being direct with someone and correcting them in a place where they unintentionally are in error, and cutting them at the knees? Like there's a big distinction between those things. And so what I saw in that really varied listener response is that it was so subjective, the way that people responded to what they were hearing there. It was almost like a Rorschach test in a sense, that even to Jake's question earlier, can you define tone? A lot of people will have different, at least different levels of variance on what's acceptable tone and what's not acceptable tone. It's like really hard to say there's a universal standard on what's an acceptable tone. It's so subjective.
Of course.
So I think you saw that in the audience response to it. And
I think it's even a little more broad than that too. That it seems like in that sort of, when we're talking about tone and Matt's approach or whatever, and being direct, and I do say sharp, because even at the time Sam took, I don't know how great offense he took, but he, the fact that he recoiled a little bit, and I felt that too, and obviously a lot of the listeners felt that too. But as Matt and I were talking this afternoon, he brought up a good point that, as conflicted as I feel about that episode or that interview, I do have to acknowledge that what better or more effective tool or delivery or tone could be used in order to deliver that message. And that's a really good point. And I don't really have a counter to that. And that's where I'm like, well, I guess you could have couched it better. You could have been softer. But would it have been?
But that's, I feel like that's where the rubber meets the road, is like the components of what comes together as tone to you. And I'm not saying that we can like deconstruct and figure and then crack the code or something, but when you say tone, like what do you like, what specifically do you mean about, was it the words he was using? Was it his volume? Was it his facial expressions? Like what were you keying in on that created that feeling around it?
If you're asking me, it was a combination of a lot of those things, but mostly that, yeah, it was kind of the volume in your voice, and not just that, but like the amount of swears you might use. Like, I gotta fucking interrupt you here. It's that kind of stuff where
I think there was only one fuck in that episode.
I think I only said one fucking, and it was very.
I'm using that as an example. I'm not quoting.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, if you're going to use examples, Tom,
yeah,
use the right ones. How was that, Tom?
Come on, Tom.
Get my shit together. All right. So yeah, that was basically it. I mean, it's like what I said to Matt earlier. It felt like, in a way, Matt took like a parental role and was like treating Sam as a child. Like,
well, that's not untrue, because but that's not untrue, because, and I think I kind of said that at the end, because there was the thing with this topic. I mean, I've experienced a lot over the last month. I've seen a lot and talked to a lot of people across the country. And I'm just going to say, on this topic, I'm an expert. And so yes, I was speaking to Sam as a well-intentioned volunteer, and I was the expert. Really trying to say, and that's why at the end I said, Sam, I'm doing this. I'm trying to do this so that you will be better and your message will be more effective. And so I can see definitely that tone of, I know some things and you don't, and you need to listen to me a little bit, was certainly there. But it was there because of the negative impact I know is happening on victims because of Sam. And that comes from a place of, it's from good intentions. It's from ignorance, not from maliciousness.
See, this is the delicate balance, right? You want to correct somebody who's maybe causing harm or even is causing harm unintentionally.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to put blame on them or even the movement because it's unintentional, and you still want to pat them on the back and congratulate them, and
right,
all the while saying you might want to turn the car 4 degrees to the left or something.
Yeah. So I accept that tone and I recognize it, but I'm done apologizing for being an expert in this field.
Yeah, and I think that type of attitude right there makes some people really uncomfortable,
for sure,
because there's an aspect of our culture where we've been taught that humility means deferring your level of expertise in certain things, and so a lot of times most of us kind of pull punches on things where we don't really need to pull punches.
Right.
And I just know, just conversations that I've had with Matt over the last several months, it doesn't surprise me at all to see you coming into more of the space of like, look, I am an expert here. I'm not gonna try and hide it. I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm going to do it. I think there's still, tone issues that people could say, yeah, you should have done it this way. You shouldn't have done it this way or whatever. That's fine. But I think it was a great conversation. So I want to ask a question, and I don't know if you want to air this part or not. But it did, I also am quite sure, and maybe I'm wrong, Matt, you could correct me.
Sure.
That there is some level of disdain towards a certain category or subcategory of ex-Mormonism as a community, like certain types of ex-Mormons that you've been growing increasingly frustrated with over time, and that kind of poured out a little bit too, I thought. And
I think that's
Sam was kind of hung in effigy in representation of this whole community that you're kind of like, fuck you guys.
I have more of a concern with tribalism.
Right. Absolutely.
And so there's so much tribalism in Mormonism and ex-Mormonism, because ex-Mormon is simply a form of Mormonism. But it's the same rat, or it's the same hamster wheel, just kind of adorned differently with different accoutrements. Bizarro
Mormonism.
Yeah, right. So there is that, and I'd push back against, particularly when I am increasingly concerned with victims becoming co-opted by victim activist groups rather than victim advocate groups, and that's happening too often, too much. And the ex-Mormon sex abuse community is heading that way, and I don't think they need to, and I don't think I don't think they have that intention, but it's heading that way. And Sam has certainly been a part of that. But that's more a function of a societal problem, a problem that we currently have as a culture. And ex-Mormonism, because it's so small, it dials in on some of those negative characteristics of tribalism as well. So yeah, I am pushing back against that as well. But it's primarily because they are advancing myths and things that don't help victims in an area that I am a particular expert in.
And the main function of that is like group unity of the ex-Mormon, because you kind of brought this up when you were talking about the boogeyman, how you turn this thing into a boogeyman that then becomes the other that we can all fight against, and that's that element of tribalism that people rally around. But it's what you call a myth. That's not actually the real issue. It's not going to be the most effective solution to go down those roads. And so really what's happening is ex-Mormon tribalism, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. It doesn't matter what the truth is as long as it's against my enemy.
Right. And so a lot of, and so what I'm trying to say here is that I think that a lot of the hostility that some people interpreted through the tone that seemed like it was coming out towards Sam is really this hostility towards a tribalism and a blindness and like
I hope I can tell you, I did not feel any. I did not feel any hostility towards Sam. I felt so much love and compassion towards him, and felt so much appreciation for him being willing, taking real sacrifices for a cause that I do find just and meaningful. It truly is that unnecessary conflation of sex abuse with the interview. And I'll give you an example, and I think I've honed on a little bit better as to what I mean by the conflation. Mm-hmm. Is when you tell Sam, why did you get into this? Oh my goodness. And he tells a very compelling, heartfelt story about his daughter being asked to masturbate. What a horrible.
Wait, what?
Understand.
Asked if she had masturbated, not asked to masturbate.
I feel like that would be groovy.
That would have been groovy.
That's actual groovy.
That's a good juxtaposition of what I'm not talking about, right? and I felt that, and I thought, okay, that's a cause worth fighting for because of the emotional, all the consequences that come with that. I've seen real sexual abuse. The trauma he experienced that caused him to send that message it's very different in substantial ways. The type of abuse I'm talking about trying to stop. Because I'll tell you guys a story. Trigger warning, I'm going to be talking about child rape. Last week, 2 weeks ago, I had a realization that one of the most vivid memories that I have is a sound of a child crying. And it was a child who was being raped on video. And I realized that because of the age of that child, she has no memory of that event, thank God. So that sound was saved for two people. Me and the guy who penetrated her. That's the hell that I live in. It is the hell that I'm trying to prevent. So our traumas are different. And when I see him doing things to try to prevent these questions, and it's having impact on helping people not prevent the type of abuse I'm trying to prevent, I'm passionate. Because I've had to ask dozens and dozens and dozens of kids about their sexual experiences. I've had to put 4-year-olds on the stand. So I'm passionate, and I'm flawed, just like Sam. And I'm sure I do things wrong out of good faith. But it's from good faith. It's because I know things. And I really know how to prevent things. So, teach me how to improve my tone to communicate with people so that they can protect their kids, because I can't protect them.
So can you connect the dot? And this is probably me not having listened to the interview.
Fairly certain about that, Jake.
What? So can you connect the dots between misusing the term grooming and?
Yeah. So grooming means something, right? There's a cycle of abuse. Sometimes we call it the offender cycle, and sometimes we call it the victim cycle, or the cycle of abuse. And it comes from Roland Summit, who developed this offender kind of cycle, really. It's been misused in courts, and it is complicated, but here's what it is essentially. You have selection, where a victim is selected, target, engagement, grooming, assault, and concealment. And the grooming behaviors have to do with breaking down the physical barriers of the child in order to make them comfortable to get to the sexual abuse. So you're looking at things like tickling. You're looking at things like, wrestling, showing kids pornography. There's a number of those, but it's kind of to break down those barriers, and it's tied to engagement, which has to do with developing the trust of a child, actually developing the trust of any individual around the child, including adults. But the grooming really has to do with that. And if we understand that, know that are steps that individuals take, we can be more cognizant of it, and we can develop policies to prevent those types of behaviors. But when we misapply that term and we say, well, talking about a kid, as Sam has done and as many people have done, it doesn't allow us to properly educate our kids to protect themselves, because ultimately that's what we have to do. We've got to stop reaching the adults, and we have to make sure that children understand the realities of these things so that they can help protect themselves. So I teach kids about grooming behaviors so that they take ownership in their own bodies, so that they understand they have the ability to say, no, I will not hug grandma because I don't want to. And that's okay, right? It leads towards that, but you've got to start by making sure that they understand what those grooming behaviors are. So if we don't understand them, if we conflate them to the point where any behavior is potentially grooming, we can't arm our kids the way that they can. Is that responsive to your question?
Is it because if it's too broad, they just won't take it into account?
They won't know what now we're at stranger danger, right? We don't if everything's grooming behaviors, nothing is.
So Matt, in the moment,
yeah.
So I don't want to belabor like stuff that you covered, because really you're just helping me do my homework that I didn't do before we got on the podcast.
We're just happy to hear you, Jake. Good listeners love it. Ladies and gentlemen, Jake Frost. Jake Frost.
So here to play, I'm playing the role of the guy that didn't really pay attention until right now.
Otherwise known as Jake Frost, ladies and gentlemen.
But I'm super dialed in right now. So like when it comes, so in the moment when you were talking to Sam, did you have any notion that like, oh, this is maybe I'm coming along a little strong right now, or maybe I don't feel as I'm not sure exactly how I'm being perceived in the way that I'm putting this.
No, I can tell you I was in the zone. I was kind of in flow while I was talking. Because I didn't prepare beforehand. I really, my thought was I'm really interested to talk to Sam. I feel very positively about him. I said my bit on Infants on Throne, our episode when I kind of we talked about a little bit, but I was really looking forward to talking to him, but I didn't know where it would go, and I was triggered. By the way, I say triggered but in the moment, no, I just felt like I was talking, and we were talking about really important stuff that was in good faith, and I was educating, and I recognized I was educating him, but his response, he received everything I thought so well, rather than pushing back and saying, well, that's really interesting. I've never heard that before. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I thought the tone was. So no, I didn't recognize it in the moment, Jake. Sorry, that was a long.
Well, there was at least one point, and maybe two, where he said, "Oh, so we shouldn't be doing anything to do this," and you're like, "Okay, don't do that to me," and then you kind of like mansplained whatever tactic it was that he was like doing an all or nothing, black or white thing. Let's not play that game. I don't respond very well to that. You said that might have been something that.
Well, and I was what I responded to there emotionally was, "Look, bro."
Yeah,
you don't fucking get to act like I don't care about the Mormon children.
Right.
Don't say that about me.
Yeah. Got it. Because I'm wondering, it's in times when I feel like I have portrayed a different, like communicated a different internal, like people perceived the way that I was engaging with the conversation in a way that was very different than the way I felt about it at the time. Which I think is a mismatch of tone. It manifests itself in a mismatch of tone. In those cases, going back, I usually am like, I could kind of see that I felt like I was pushing the envelope a little bit in this particular direction. But I don't know. That's only the ones I know about. There's probably a bunch of other times when people were just like, what a dick. But I just never knew about it. And I was like, that went great. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is there any way to catch it in the moment to kind of to hold up a mirror to ourselves, like in the moment, and try and assess whether or not we're communicating a different internal experience than what's actually going on.
I'm going to say yes.
For sure. I mean,
okay. Well, what are your techniques?
But that doesn't change how subjective people are going to receive it.
Right. There you go.
Because I mean, even before I listened to this interview, I talked with Tom about it, and Tom's like, yeah, you need to tell me what you think, because that was pretty harsh. And I had just it was either that day or the day before, I had listened to that recording with the Dateline person that Matt talked about earlier, where he was much more aggressive with her than anything that I heard in Sam. And so having that as kind of like my baseline, I'm like, oh, Tom, no, I mean, Matt's totally measured, I could hear how measured Matt was in having an intentional tone. So it's not like he was off the cuff. He was out of control. He wasn't, so I think the tone is exactly what it was, and there were people who loved it and people who didn't.
You just
so turns out that's
what it was.
So your question, Jake, is there a way to change your tone? Yes. Is there a way to make it so it's acceptable to every single listener? No.
Is there a way to minimize blowback?
Well, so here's the other thing. I don't know that there was blowback. What if I look at the comments everywhere? There were the comments were overwhelmingly positive, and I'll tell you this: I've gotten more emails from this episode than basically any other, and they have all been emails of, I would like to engage in this fight. What can I do to help? And I'm going to change the way I approach this now. And I've never gotten that before. I've never gotten a response of, that reflects change in people. And so that causes me to say, well, maybe it was effective, or it was effective because it.
So why did you want to have this conversation?
Because Tom, I want to be even better if I can. And if Tom's uncomfortable with it, I trust Tom's instincts. That's what it comes down to.
Well, yeah, but we just exonerated ourselves, apparently.
Did we? I mean, I don't know if we did. I want Tom to say, no, Tom, no, Matt, you were right, and I support. No, I need Tom's approval is what I'm saying.
Okay, well, Tom, bring us home.
Well, I think this goes back to what we discussed earlier, Matt, and I'll just state it here. And I know I mentioned it earlier. It's complicated. Just talking about this in general, it's complicated. How effective is a more direct or sharp tone, as if it's a little more soft, a little more couched, a little more, I don't know, I hate to use the word pandering, but in a tone that is like patting you on the back, but also trying to course correct. Like, I really appreciate what you're doing here, but you really ought to pay attention to this, and this, and this as well. Would that, and that's what Matt asked me earlier, is would that have been more effective than the tone that he took during the interview? And that's an excellent question. And I don't know. No one knows. And we don't.
Right.
But I will say that, to Matt's point, he has evidence to show that it was effective to a certain extent, to a certain degree. And I can only concede that point. But to me, I would have preferred, and maybe this is just me wanting, my balls washed in the moment. I don't know, but that I just want a little less awkwardness, a little less what I consider hostility and sharpness, and that I still feel like that message or that point can still be delivered just as effective, or maybe debatably more effective, if it's approached in a better way. So that's all.
Here's what I can tell you. I was moved upon by the Holy Ghost. And, for behold, I spoke with sharpness. And reproving.
Yeah, there's a
I have it up here somewhere. I fucking
spoke betimes with sharpness.
I reproved betimes with sharpness when moved upon by the Holy Ghost, and then showing forth afterwards an increase of love towards him whom thou hast reproved, lest he esteem thee to be his enemy. And so at the end, I hope I did enough ball washing, because I meant it, about all the things that I felt about him and his movement and everything he did. So all I did is take the example of my prophet Joseph Smith.
Your prophet.
Yeah, right, my prophets. All of our prophets, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No, but it's a question I have, because here's the thing that I the reason why I'm an expert in sex crimes, trial work, and which includes rhetorical speaking, is because I'm constantly looking to improve. And I know a lot, and I've learned a lot over the last 15 years of doing this. But the thing that I've learned the most is there's a lot I don't know. And so these conversations about communication and delivery and that it's important, because it's important to my job, because it's not just to be rhetorical for rhetorical's sake, but to try to communicate truth. It's what I try to do in court. And it's what I try to do on these podcasts. And so if there's a way to be even more effective of doing that, I'm open to that. But not from any, I can tell you this, not from any listeners. So any comments that think, I think black, I don't fucking care. I'm really not going to respond to any comments, because I told you I care about Tom, I care about Glenn and Jake, I care about what my wife thinks, and there's a couple others, but I can promise you, in the universe of our listeners, I don't give a shit what you think about it.
Well, it's weird too, because, and I know that I'm probably bringing to the table a little bit of my parental baggage, where it's like, how effective can I be at coaching or even instructing or educating my children on certain things? Is it more of a direct, like, you're going to need to clean your goddamn room right goddamn now? Or do I take
That's too many goddams?
I know, right?
You violated the goddamn rule.
God damn it.
God damn it.
Or I take more of a subtle approach, like, you need to, it'd be really helpful to your mother and I, and it'd make us feel good if you go clean your room. That's even more of a pandering sort of a...
Yeah. Are you going to be a hard ass or a pussy? But that's the question, right?
That's
that's the only two options.
Only two options. But do you catch what I'm saying? That there's a different way to get about it and effectively deliver what you're trying to deliver, to maximize your output, to maximize your message. And
sure.
that was really my only concern. And again, I'm coming from it from my perspective, where I felt like that we may have lost some people. And I have to not congratulate, I guess, really compliment Sam in not being completely turned off. He was in a very mature position to actually sit and listen. I do think that he was mildly turned off at a time or two, but the fact that he kind of waded through it and then took notes and listened and said, all right, this has been very instructive and I really appreciate it. Yeah. I think he really meant that. So that's a big, kudos to him. But I also think that if he wasn't in that place of maturity, I think he could have been turned off, said, you know what, this is not what I planned on. I didn't think that this interview is going to be some sort of lecture or telling me everything I'm doing wrong. So fuck you guys, I'm out.
Sure.
I feel like it could have gone that way if
he was operating from a place of ego, which he clearly isn't.
Right.
Well, I wonder if it's I don't know, because the way that you just described what you just described, Tom, like as saying, what parental approach are you going to take? I think that is often. I think that kind of waves away the part that's most critical, which is adults don't like being told what to do unless there's a really good reason that you're going to let that guy tell you what to do or what to think, or adults are much more hesitant to accept a hierarchy where somebody else is in a position of authority and they're not, than kids are. And if you're their parent, like, it's already implicit in there. It's like, yeah, well, I'm in a position, the hierarchy exists because I am your parent. But I don't know if Matt explaining why he's an expert about it, that seems like that's a pretty effective approach, because it gives you a really
I don't think
it got a safe face to say, okay, I'm going to listen to this and be in like a learning role, and you're the teacher, because there's actually you have a lot of credibility around this.
Yeah, but
what do you mean when you're saying effective? Because we've been using that word a lot. What do you mean by effective?
Great.
Well, so effective meaning that you don't have you don't have somebody that is resisting being instructed about something where there's a clear asymmetry of knowledge, where like one person knows a lot, the other person doesn't know as much. The person that knows a lot wants to tell the person that doesn't know as much, educate them about the topic that they know about. If the extent to which you can minimize the amount of resistance from the dumb person being like, well, I'm not going to let you tell me what to do. If you can minimize that so that you can increase the flow of information from person that knows to person that doesn't know, that's what I mean by it.
So I think what you're talking about is doxastic openness. The doxastic,
what I'm talking about is
measure of doxastic openness is the
pedantic.
That's how you determine effectiveness. How doxastically open are they in the conversation? Okay, I'm with you now, Jake. I'm with you.
Oh, okay, all right. Sorry, I had to find a hair to split.
Yeah.
So I'll tease another episode. I'm going to do a recording with Ryan McKnight where we talk about those
the
documents
leaks
I leaked. Yeah, I think next week. So you guys want to come on? We can do that.
Okay, so but that's what I mean by effectiveness, Glenn. So did you have another question after that?
Oh, I was trying to be effective by dropping a bomb and then teasing it and doing a callback to it. Jake, what the fuck, man?
I'm sorry. Okay, well, yeah.
It's a rhetorical device, man.
Well, I guess because I would say that effectiveness is measured by how, what if somebody gets the message or not, or what message they get, whether there's the message or whatever. And so for people who have tone as a deterrent and they're not able to hear what Matt has to say because they're so turned off by the way he's saying it,
right?
That's not effective. But so are there ways to go in and fix it so that those people won't be turned off by tone and change your tone? Maybe, sure, you can change your tone, but this is one episode, one time, one thing that I think was incredibly effective in just the response that we've seen from people contact. We don't usually get people emailing us as much as they did with this and commenting on the websites and commenting on Facebook, that. There was a Reddit thread. We don't get a lot of love on Reddit. Not that there was a lot of love on this one, but we.
Oh, was there? I didn't read that.
Yeah, no. It generated discussion. It generated buzz, and I think that's a measure of effectiveness. And maybe the only reason it did was because people were talking about his tone, but still,
I don't necessarily look at that as a good measure of effectiveness, but
right, all the response.
It could be.
Yeah. And
I think it is. I mean, I think if it's causing a reaction, then it's causing a discussion. I think to what I love is that the conversation's about my tone and not Matt's wrong. Because
I haven't been hearing anybody say that you're wrong. So
then only that you're wrong about your tone, and that they don't like hearing somebody people like, I don't want to hear an insufferable know-it-all lecturing somebody else. I'm like, okay, all right. Okay. Well, you don't have to. You don't have to listen to that then. But
I hope I wasn't insufferable.
Insufferability is in the eye of the beholder,
right? I get you, and I may, the dude that said that, we probably wouldn't like to chat with me anywhere, but I probably wouldn't want to talk with you.
Cafeteria with them.
Let you grab a mic and let me hear how you sound when you talk about your best subjects. Do you sound like an idiot, or do you sound like an insufferable know-it-all? I hope you sound like an insufferable know-it-all.
I mean, better that than an idiot if it's the thing that you're supposed to know.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
We have plenty of examples of both,
and I am a great example of that. Many times over.
So answer me this, Matt, because I get this impression that you're kind of done trying to couch your points or what you're trying to say, and you kind of feel like, listen, if I'm going to lose people on the fringes by being direct or saying what I mean and meaning what I say, then so be it.
Yeah, the thing is I'd just rather be me. And the people who like what I have to say and not just agree with it, but it starts to resonate, if they will also start by listening, then I'm always listening to them. So I really don't care anymore. I'm going to start speaking things that I know, and there are things that I know, and I don't care. I'll correct myself to those people who know more than me and can help me adjust what I know and fill in what I don't know. But yeah, I'm done trying to couch and, oh, let me appeal to authority and here's why I know it and please accept what I have to say is true because I don't need to be accepted anymore as an expert. I just am. And I've got to peek behind the curtain, dealing when talking to the national experts on this topic, and most of them are idiots. Many of them are. Some are not, but most of them that aren't are very, very poor communicators or are not in the field of communication. So the people who are talking probably don't know what they're talking about. And I'm not pretending that that's not the case anymore because it is.
Fair enough.
And I mean, I went on 3 news stations, or two news stations, and a Canadian NPR, CBC, and unprepared.
That doesn't even count.
Right, Canadians.
2.5
Canadian NPR. Right. That's no, you're really.
And it got to the point when this is my first time on television, first time on cable news. Everybody's telling me what a big deal is. You need to prepare and go get media training and stuff. And I started to psych myself up and thought I really need to prepare for this. And then I thought, wait a minute, no, I don't. I just need to listen to the questions and answer honestly because I know this stuff. And I'm an expert on law enforcement. I'm an expert on criminal law. I'm an expert on sex crimes and trials and criminal procedure. And I'm an expert on there's a lot of other things that I happen to be an expert on because of those expertise. And so as they were talking about the best topics, I was talking to other experts supposedly, and I realized, these guys have no idea what they're talking about. They certainly don't understand the intersection. And that's the one thing that I have is this intersection of sex crimes experience with the law enforcement criminal side. And that gives me particular insight and particular perspective that other people don't have. So, I mean, take your best subject, right? And take, if your best subject professionally is, you can mix that with your best subject, from your hobby and just the thing the most about. That's what I am when it comes to the law, criminal law and sex crimes investigations and procedure and those things. So
in a way, you're saying that your patience is pretty worn thin because you don't want to have to sit there and educate people on the fundamentals or the basics. Okay.
Yep. And I'm done trying to be cute, and I'm done trying to, hey guys, maybe I could explain it by not explaining it because I know if I just tell you how it is, you won't accept it because nobody will accept an expert. So I've been working through all these ways of, maybe I can do pantomime, or maybe I could do, some, a joke to try to get people to look over here. And I'm just talked to too many, not experts. I've talked to too many national reporters. I've talked to too many psychologists. I've talked to too many therapists. I've talked to too many victims, too many offenders, too many victim and offenders' families. And so, the problem is he came on Infants on Thrones, but in that topic and that moment, I wasn't an infant, I was an expert. And so he came in, and that's what I feel bad about is maybe not is the context, the set or the setting rather was a poor one for it because it wasn't just, hey, we're infants when none of us really know, hey, what's going on, and that was unfair to Sam, and I realized that in retrospect, and I truly regret that he genuinely felt sandbagged and truly experienced that. But that brings me to another complicated issue that I think highlights things why we should start by listening, is because you had a situation where Sam absolutely experienced being sandbagged. That was his experience. And it would be silly for me to say, "Nuh-uh, Sam, because that's not what I intended. And my intentions are all that matter. So you just need to accept how I received it or how I delivered it because of my intentions." I'm not saying that. I'm saying quite the opposite. I'm saying I truly regret that as an individual, Sam felt that and experienced that because there's no way he couldn't have. But that certainly wasn't my intention. That doesn't necessarily, I'm not saying I should be absolved for any trauma or any harm that I would have caused to Sam. I can only say that my experience, and I recognize the trauma and the way he accurately experienced that. And I wish I would always like to be able to adjust myself to not have my words and my tone cause trauma to people, because it's been the bane of my existence.
See,
because I have caused so much unnecessary trauma in my kids.
You should only be an expert on Mormon stories. That's the thing. Is if you're talking about something that you know things about,
That's Mormon stories.
Somewhere else, you got to. Well, you on Mormon stories.
Oh, gotcha.
That's the platform where you go in authoritative, expert. Here, you have to be an idiot. You got to slum it with us.
Well, I mean, if it means anything, I actually really appreciate what you were saying, Matt. And I mean, even though I did feel pretty conflicted about the whole experience and the whole episode, I feel a lot better.
Good.
It means a lot to me just to hear, that you are interested in maximizing the effectiveness and the delivery and all that stuff. And I kind of knew that, but it was really useful or good to just reiterate that in my mind, and that you are very compassionate and extremely passionate about this topic, and that it hits not just a nerve, but it hits direct, close to home. It is your home. This is where you spent the most amount of your adult life, in this shithole of sex abuse.
So let me tell you why I brought up the video that I had to watch. The reason why I used that example, because it really stuck with me, because I was there to convict the guy that had downloaded that possessed it. There was nothing anyone was ever going to do to get the guy that was doing it. And that level of what? Not being able to do anything.
Like helplessness.
Yeah. From someone like me who was, there to protect kids was, is a helplessness that we all feel. And so in that moment is this, big bad attorney prosecutor. I'd go out and get the big guy. Bit. I was as helpless as anyone. And so it was then that I thought, whatever I do in life, I hope I do things to try to protect the vulnerable and to give the vulnerable the tools to protect themselves.
I hope so too. I don't know. That's tough.
Jeez. Heavy stuff, I know. Huh?
Yeah,
fucking
right.
downer, man.
I know.
Where's your jokes now, Jake?
I only have 3 post-child rape jokes. I
used to have 4. Got rid of that one.
Yeah, that's it. That got one.
Yeah. No, and I'll tell you this, man. I will never. I used to tell you guys. I think I'd say, I'd get drunk, and I'd cry. I just sob, about every 6 months when I was doing the job. And years and years after stopped doing it, I stopped doing that. I really felt, I'm totally healed. And I don't know what that means. What I know is there's definitely a hole in me from the experiences that I've experienced and the things that I've seen. And now, rather than wanting to fill those or wanting to heal those, I truly carry those scars as souvenirs. I mean, I've used that line before with my folks in the talking about, but it's true. And this is another one that I treasure, because it sometimes gives me purpose, it gives me motivations, and it gives me compassion towards little ones. So I instead carry that as a souvenir and a pain that I can I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, but there's baggage. There's baggage to that too. I mean, I think we've all, and you could even attest to it, that occasionally something will even get close to that, and then it bubbles things up that maybe you're not even prepared to either experience or deal with at the time. I don't know, man. I can't even possibly imagine what that would be like. I can only just use my imagination. But I don't know, man. Like I can't even imagine, like, if you're just watching a movie and there's like even just a depiction of child abuse or rape or anything like that.
Oh yeah, no, that doesn't bug me at all because it's fake. No, I've seen. I mean, that stuff doesn't affect me anymore. Like, yeah, and it never really has. I can't explain it. I can't explain it, man, because the kids. I mean, I think of my kids, man. I think of my kids, not my kids, the kids that I've dealt with and talked to, and they're just so real and so, I don't know. I don't know. I'm interested where you went there because I haven't really thought of it in those terms. I don't know. That's interesting.
Well, when I hear the statistics, it just scares the shit out of me, obviously, as any parent would just be, deathly frightened, and now with my daughter making it to college, I mean, I actually remember thinking she made it to at least this stage of her life and didn't have any serious traumatic episode. And the problem is a lot of them do. I mean, a lot. I can't remember what stats are, like 1 in 3. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, and who knows, because of reporting and other things, and it's man. But
it might be higher.
Dude, I'm so scared of these. So the things that I get, is that in cars, man. I get. That's the other thing, because that's the other thing I've seen is man, sex abuse in cars, because I have experienced so much incredible proxy trauma from families that have dealt in on both sides, both on the victim and the criminal side, right? Each layers of families, the amount of catastrophic just damage as a result of sexual abuse and car, DUI accidents, deceit, those types of things.
Yeah.
And the car things are so preventable. And so we have a mantra in our home, and every kid that comes in, I give them a lecture on driving cars. And I know Glenn's like, well, you like text as you drive, right? And not anymore, not as much. Don't do that. But
only when you're high.
That's good. Yeah. And on the perks. But our mantra in the home is we're not going to die in one of these. We will die. We will die somewhere, not in one of these, not in a car. So anyway, those are my two fears with kids, man. As I said, is your daughter's going to college, and my kids, and they're in this fucking snow. And it's like, yeah, man. Being a parent sucks.
Yeah, welcome, Jake.
I got it. Yeah, and I thought continuously wondering if he was going to break his head. Like right now, stairs are my number one fear.
Yeah, it's like electrical outlets too, or is that?
Oh shit!
My parents tell the story about, like, we're playing hide and seek, and my brother goes in like a 5-gallon jug of water, like the water jugs you do at like at the football games and stuff, and like we put the lid in it to limit his oxygen, and
right. The orgasm's amazing.
Nice.
2 more jokes coming.
Thanks for doing this, Tom.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, man.
Hi, this is Hillary.
Matthew. Ryan.
Carol.
Keith.
Ashley. And I like to play bingo online while listening to Infants on Thrones.
You can comment on this episode on the website, infantsonthrones.com.
And if you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes.
I did. Anyone for the closing prayer?
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.